Okay, so this little thing just arrived today, which is the, make sure that's focused, which is the EF to micro four thirds mount, the speedbooster XL. So it's the new one, which is meant to add even more light into your GH4, which is what I'm going to be using it for. As you can see, there's a big warning label on the front there when you get it, which is warning you that you want to make sure that you're using this with the right camera, because as you can see, it insets into the camera body a fair amount with that lens there. So yeah, definitely make sure you're using it with the right camera. I'm going to be using it with the GH4, which I believe it's pretty much designed for. So I should be fine. As you can see, there's quite a large lens in there, or probably a few lenses. I don't know exactly how it works, but I don't care as long as it does the job, with a nice bit of flock going on. You don't get a whole lot with it, you just get a couple of Allen keys, one for this outer ring here, and then one for the little mount, the foot mount for your mounting point for your tripod, and a couple of little rubber plugs in here as well. One little problem I'll point out straight away is that as you can see, I've got a piece of electrical tape holding this little USB plug in place, because that falls out very easily. And although I haven't tested it yet, I will test that shortly. But if it's anything like the Sony A7s one, which is my other Metabones adapter, it's not a speed booster, it's just an adapter. But the USB on that one, if that comes out, it's actually a hell of a light leak, so it lets lots of light into the side of the camera and ruins your shot. So it's damn annoying that falls out so easily, because it's it's actually relatively important. And obviously, if light's getting in, then dust and other stuff's going to be getting in as well. One quick note, it's worth pointing out, if you're anything like me, you swap your lens caps and your body caps and all that, you swap them around all over the place, and they end up on different cameras and different lenses and all that kind of stuff, as long as they fit. But with the Metabones one, because it sort of sticks out so much, there is like a deeper cap, so make sure you always use the Metabones cap with the Metabones, this speed booster in particular. As you can see, if you accidentally grab a normal micro four thirds cap, it's a fraction of the size, so it's going to mush up against the lens. So yeah, always make sure you use the right cap. So what I've been doing today is a couple of tests. Let me just get this beast. I've been doing a couple of tests with the Canon 50. This isn't even going to get in shot, is it? No. And with my lovely Canon 70-200 2.8, and with this new speed booster and this lens. Should have taken it off the rails already, but it's all nice and solid on there. Yeah, with this speed booster, it turns this 2.8 lens into a 1.8 lens. At least that's what it says on the screen anyway. It literally says on the camera screen that it's giving you a whole extra stop. So it's probably worth doing a quick test with that. I'll do a test with a comparable micro four thirds lens on the GH4, leaving all the camera settings exactly the same, and then see exactly how much light is actually getting in there, see if it's telling fibs or whether it is actually giving you that whole extra stop of light. So anyway, yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So I'll just pop it on so you can see it on the camera. Let's get this bulky giant piece of glass out of the way. Yeah, like I said, this first GH4 speed booster I have owned, so or used. So I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit bigger, like the A7s adapter. But obviously that's larger because it's replicating the deeper cameras of the mirrored cameras, whereas this thing has got the lens. The lens is doing all the work, I'm guessing. So let's just pop. Let's turn this camera back down again. Let's pop the nifty 50 1.8 on there, just so you can get a quick sort of easy look at what it looks like. So we have a little aperture control here. Now what I've noticed is, let's turn this screen around. If you use the aperture control, let's get it relatively focused. That'll do. If you use the aperture control on the actual on the Metabones, I don't know if you can see that. Let's refocus. As you can see, it jumps up and down I don't quite know why it does that. My other Metabones doesn't have the aperture control, so it's all through the camera. So I don't know why it jumps up such a large amount. It goes from 1.2 to, so yeah, this is a 1.8 lens, which is showing up as a 1.2. So it goes from 1.2 to 1.3, 1.8, 2.5, 3.6. Whereas if you click it in and then get control back by the camera, you've got much smaller incremental control there. So don't know why it's doing that. I mean, I'm probably always going to use the aperture control through the camera anyway, just because that's what I'm used to. But it's nice to know it's there. Like, you know, you might have some combination of things where you really need it. So yeah, but anyway, it's one odd thing I notice is the large jumps. As you can see, it jumps all over the place when I use that. Maybe an update will fix that, I just don't know. So let's click it in again and give it back to the camera. So yeah, as you can see, this is a 1.8, the nifty 50 Canon, a cheap and cheerful but still a great lens. It's showing up as 1.2 at its widest, so that's yeah, a lot of extra light it's letting in. So yeah, best to get on with some tests, I suppose. So I will check out the vignetting and check out the comparable field of view, especially to my Sony, because I'm very curious about which is going to be best, which camera is going to be best to use that Canon 70-200, my GH4 or my Sony. Obviously the two different workhorses, one's great in low light and this one's got the internal 4K. So there's, you know, pros and cons of both, but I kind of want to use it for kite surfing and distance stuff, so I'm hoping it's going to be better on this one, just because it's going to give me the better slow-mo options on the GH4. Don't need the low light capabilities in the middle of the day for kite surfing or surfing. Oops, click that in again. There we go. Yeah, so anyway, but that's kind of one of the tests I'm going to be doing, but I'll do a bunch of other tests as well. Like I say, this is my first Metabones for my GH4, so I can't compare it to the old one for you guys, unfortunately, which I'm sure that's what a lot of you kind of want to know the answers to, but I'll just do what tests I can and then post them, and then you can make of it what you will. Okay, let's get on with it. So here we have the GH4 on the Canon 70-200 at 70. We've got the aperture as wide as it will go, which is 1.8, ISO at 200, and shutter speed at 50. Keep those numbers the same for everything, 50 and 200. I've got a light on the floor, so it's a constant light bouncing up and hitting that Lego picture. So it's saying we're 2 stops over with this lens, with the new speed booster on the GH4, and this is in 4K mode, so you've got the crop of the 4K mode, so that's kind of everything you need to know about that. I've got another little figure just here, which as you can see is my check for sort of depth of field. That's placed about halfway between us and that Lego picture. So there you go, there's the depth of field and the out-of-focus bokeh, as everyone likes to call it, at 70. Let's zoom into 200, bit of a wobbly tripod here, refocus. So that's the amount of out of focus we're getting, and that's about 1.5 meters to the figure and then 2 meters to the picture in the background. Let's focus past the figure back to my Lego artwork, if you want to call it that. And it's still saying 2 stops over, so the zooming in to the 200 on this lens is still getting in plenty of light, more light than what we actually need. So there you go. So that's what that looks like, fully zoomed in on at 4K on the GH4. And what I shall do now is I'll pop the Sony on and have a look at the field of view to see how it matches up to the GH4 in 4K. Okay, so now we're on the Sony A7s, and we've got the lens, same lens, it's at 70. We're actually in the APS-C mode in the Sony, and as you can see that I'll have to compare it once I've got them side by side on the computer screen, but to me, looking at the back of the camera, that looks very, very similar to the GH4 in 4K. in terms of the field of view. I've got the aperture as wide as it will go, which is obviously, well, obviously to me, is 2.8 on this lens because it's a 2.8 lens. I've got everything else the same, ISO at 200, shutter speed at 1/50th, and as we can see, it's much darker. It's yeah, it's saying that everything's exposed correctly, basically, whereas we were a couple of stops over on the GH4. So yeah, that is kind of showing to me that, you know, we are getting more light in with that speed booster through the magic of lenses. I'll just quickly show what that looks like. So here we go. Let's refocus on the Lego. That's at 200. Remember, this is an APS-C mode, so it's a little bit tighter than it would be full frame. Let's bring our focus back to our little creeper figure. It's a very adult household around here. Lots of Lego and yeah, video game figures. And that gives you an idea of the out of focus area. We'll come back and refocus as well at 70. Okay, so let's quickly stop recording and I'll pop it into non-APS-C mode so we can see the slightly wider field of view with that. Hang on a sec. Okay, so here's the non-APS-C full frame, and this is that lens at 70. Let's quickly zoom onto the Lego picture again. There you go, that's the difference in the APS-C mode on and off. Okay, so we're back on the GH4 now. Everything's the same, ISO 200, shutter speed's 50th, and we've got this 1.8 aperture which the speed booster is giving me. And what I wanted to do now is change the aperture to 2.8, which is what the lens should be. It is a 2.8 lens without the speed booster, just to see if that matches up in terms of exposure to the Sony's 2.8 without the speed booster. I know it's two different cameras, so it's not the best test in the world, but kind of gives me an idea how much this speed booster is actually adding and how much it's possibly fibbing about. I'll pull back out. It's saying that we're one stop underexposed on the GH4, but you know, that could be slightly interpretive anyway. Okay, just taking a couple of photographs of that plain white wall with natural light coming in the side. So it's evenly lit, and this is in full HD mode video now. I'm just checking for vignetting. So this is with the lens at 1.8. I'm going to pop the 50mm on next because that's going to give us even wider aperture, so that will hunt around for any kind of nasty vignetting wide open. I'll quickly drop the, just while we're talking here, I'll drop the aperture down, bring the shutter speed up. Let's drop it down to 9, shall we? Just to see if that vignetting has suddenly disappeared. There is I could notice a little bit on the screen, not loads, but a little bit. Obviously, it's going to be more in the photo because that gets into the corners more than the video, but it's just a little bit easier for me to talk this way. Oops, let's get that shutter speed a little bit faster because the light's changing. And let's close right down to 20, and then we'll put the video, it's under cranking now to 8 shutter speed. So, but anyway, yeah, that's going to show up any. Let's go the other way. So we're putting the aperture all the way back to 1.8, and then the shutter speed's coming all the way up to 800. So that's with yeah, well, aperture at 1.8 on the Canon 70-200. Now let's swap over to my 50mm because that's the widest lens Canon lens that I've got for this one. Okay, I just took a couple of photographs with the 50mm, one at aperture wide open and then one at closed down was the second one. And here we are at 4 HD on the GH4, again with the 50mm, and this is the aperture wide open, so it's a 1.8 lens, but it's showing up as 1.2 on the back of the camera. And let's just boost that light level slightly. There you go, shutter speed at 1000. So yeah, so we're just looking for any vignetting. I can see a tiny bit on the screen, but yeah, I'll be able to tell. Oh, sunshine suddenly come out. Let's close that, speed that shutter speed up. So yeah, that should show up any vignetting, because that's a plain white wall with side lighting, which is very even. So any vignetting will be the combination of the lens and the speed booster. Okay, that's probably enough of that. Okay, this is image stabilization test. I wanted to make sure that the stabilizer was working through the new speed booster, the new adapter. So I've had the stabilizer turned on this whole time on the Canon lens. I know I've had lots of people telling me that you should never have image stabilization when it's on a tripod, but I have no problems at all with this Canon lens with the image stabilization turned on. Anyway, so first of all, this is with the image stabilization turned on. So I'm gonna shake the camera now. Shaking it quite a lot. It's wobbling around on the top of this tripod. I'm not sure how much of that is coming across, but I'm definitely shaking it. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the stabilization off. Bizarrely, that suddenly looked like a different exposure. Anyway, so let's shake the camera now. This is about the same amount of shake as what I was just doing it. Yeah, to me on the screen that looks like that is definitely working. So that's good news. Turn the stabilization back on. How odd, it changes the exposure slightly on the screen when you do that. Maybe it's a power drain or something. And now I'm shaking the camera to the same amount. You can probably hear it shaking. And it looks very steady on the screen. I still haven't figured out which stabilization mode is best on this Canon 70-200, because there's 1 and 2. I've left it on one since I've bought it and it seems to be working pretty well, but I do need to investigate that at a later date. So let's just shake it again. That's a real shake now, real old violent shake. Turn it off again. And then, yeah, God, that makes a huge difference. I can tell that on the screen of the GH4, so turn it back on. Yeah, that's definitely working, so that's really good news. So I hope some of that was useful. Sorry, if it's a little bit of a long waffly test today. I'm full of disease, full of flu, so I'm feeling quite rough. But I wanted to do this test as soon as I got it, so I could kind of get my head around the new speed booster and its ups and downs, pros and cons. Anyway, so what have we learned? The field of view is comparable to APS-C size. So that's kind of useful if I'm trying to match things or figure out what lens to use or whatever. APS-C size is very similar to the 4K in the GH4. The out of focus area, bokeh, whatever you want to call it, is it's very comparable to full frame, possibly slightly more blurred out, with that extra aperture stop, f-stop, whatever you want to call it. It does seem to equate to a slightly more blurred out background, but that's a little bit subjective on my part. But yeah, it's very similar to full frame, so yeah, you're going to get that nice isolation of subject that you want. No problems with this, as long as you've got a lens that's wide enough to utilize it. The rubber USB cover will fall out and you will lose it most likely, so I would recommend doing what I do and popping a little bit of electrical tape on it just to keep it in place, or blue tack or something. It doesn't light leak though, like my my other Metabones adapter, so that's one good thing, I guess. The aperture control unit jumps around and is a little bit twitchy. That's the actual button on the speed booster itself, but it works fine going through the camera anyway, so it's not a big deal in my opinion, but hopefully an update will fix this later on for those people that need that button. Vignetting, there's definitely vignetting, no doubt, but I think it's more of an issue for photos which is obviously using the whole sensor and getting into the corners. I've only tried out on a couple of lenses today, you know, like I said, that 2.8 and my 1.8 50 millimeter. But yeah, there's definitely vignetting. I think if you're filming in the 4K crop mode, that issue will pretty much be eliminated, unless you're filming lots of white walls or incredibly, you know, flat, non-tonal areas. It possibly might show up if you're doing like some sort of studio shoot or something, and you've got like, you know, a white cyc or something behind. Then you might start to spot that vignetting creeping in. Wide open aperture, but stop it down a little bit and it disappears quite quickly. And like I say, in the 4K crop mode, it's not too much of an issue. Mainly for photos, you're definitely gonna notice it for photos, but I don't think many people are going to be using this for photos anyway, because you've got no autofocus, etc., etc. Image stabilization works fine going through it, which is great, because the image stabilization in that Canon lens, in my 70-200, which is obviously quite a long lens and you need it, you need image stabilization for that. It works really well, so I'm glad that works fine through there. And I've had a quick look at what the actual stop of light, or stop and a half, or whatever they say you're going to get. Looks like about a stop of light to me, just subjective, my opinion, but it's real. It's a real, you know, tangible thing. So it's damn nice to have it. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Like I say, I never had the previous speed booster, so I can't really compare it to that, unfortunately. But it's doing what it's meant to be doing, as far as I can see, which is great. So anyway, yeah, I hope that test was useful, guys. It probably should have been edited down a little bit neater and shorter for to make it watchable, but yeah, like I said, I'm full of flu today, so I'm just gonna post it as it is, and I hope some of it was useful. So any comments, please pop them down, and they're useful. You know, this is mostly about me learning about this tech myself, so you know, feedback's really useful. So pop something in the comments. You know, criticisms, totally fine with that. So yeah, if you reckon I should have done something differently, then let me know, because it's all a big learning process. One last thing, I did a bunch of tests with image stabilization tests with all my different lenses today, because on my last sort of test video, I got sort of criticism for using image stabilization on the tripod. But as I explained to a couple of people in the comments, it was a very windy day and it was hitting the camera, so the camera was basically shaking, even though it was on the tripod, even though it was on a relatively heavy tripod. I did a bunch of tests today, and yeah, it reconfirmed that the image stabilization in my 14-140 lens, the Lumix, is very skittish, and it's just not great. I mean, if you're going to be hand holding a shot, then yeah, turn it on. But it's a little bit unreliable, just generally. That's what I found. That compared to my 42mm Nocticron, the image stabilization of that is much better. Again, the lens is worth twice that of the 14-140, so that's to be expected. And the image stabilization in that Canon is fantastic. It's really, really good. But then, you know, that's a £1,600 lens, so you'd expect it to be. But anyway, just a little bit of a kind of a catch up on that. But if anyone wants to see those tests, they're more than welcome to. I don't think I'll bother posting them unless someone specifically asked to see those. But yeah, I did a bunch of image stabilization tests between different lenses. Anyway, okay guys, I hope that was useful. Like I say, sorry if it was a bit long, but I am full of flu, so I'll speak to you guys later and hopefully get better.